understand that leadership in itself is not an easy place to be. And I do not want to take away from what Sam is about to present to us, because I know he's going to tell us quite a bit about his experience in that area. And I must say he has quite a bit of experience in that particular area. So my name is Vicky Karuga, and I run a company called Profiles International, and we deal with what we call talent management solutions. So we work in the area of providing psychometric assessments, leadership trainings, and also speaking to this area we're calling navigating leadership transitions. I do not want to speak too much so that I don't take away from the 60 minutes we have with Sam today. So allow me to introduce him, the chief guest for today. And we have with us Mr. Sam Ayiro, who is an award-winning learning and development leader with dynamic international, regional, and national experiences in designing, developing, and deploying organizational learning. I met Sam at KCB, where he was in charge of thinking out loud and also thinking, I guess, internally of what are the solutions that were required to ensure business success where he was. So he says he has had serial success in preparing talent for future leadership opportunities, strengthening decision-making and strategic thinking. He is driven by his passion for developing leaders, and he is also inspired, and he has inspired behavior change and learning mindsets that facilitate impactful development experiences and sustain agile teams. As a thought leader and strategic partner to senior leaders, he delivers contemporary and future-focused trainings and talent development plans that cultivate winning teams and empowers them for the disruptive market dynamics. I have known Sam for not very long, but within the short time that I have known him, I have loved listening to him. And when he speaks from that space of knowledge, not ile knowledge, juju, as in from having thought about it and having observed it, having lived it. And so I am really, really honored to have him as our guest tonight. So thank you very much, Sam, for agreeing to be part of this webinar. And I will hand it over to you to take the session. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky, and great to be here. I'm honored to speak to all the people all the way from Oslo to Congo to Asingishu to Nairobi and all points in between. Very passionate about this conversation around leadership. And I always think about a quote that was written by John Maxwell, I would say one of the foremost authors around leadership, who said, if you are leading and there's no one following you, then you're just taking a walk. And the reality is many times we think that we have come into leadership because we get a new title. But if you stand in a room and there is that person who says, let us, and people actually do whatever is being asked to do, or when you're having a conversation and asking people to do something and everyone is quiet, and then there's that one person who then says, I think this is a good idea, and everybody then agrees, then that person is actually the leader of the room. And so as we think about navigating through these different transitions, my thought today is for us just to spend some time reflecting on the workplace, mainly because that's where then titles come in and experiences happen. But at the same time, think about those leadership traits that then would influence all other facets of life. So the skills that you need to apply as a leader at work are the same ones you will use in your nonprofit, in your church, in your chama, in your estate group, in that WhatsApp group where there's those people who are always making noise and others who are always quiet. So very happy to have this conversation. And as we go on, please feel free to post any questions you have in the chat, and we will try and get through them and not spend the whole amount of time talking, but allow us to have then a conversation as we go forward. So as we start, many times when you think about your work experience, and coming from this background of being in the space of learning and development within organizations, one of the things we are very keen to do is run induction programs for anybody who comes into an organization. So before you start working, someone will always sit you in a room or put you on a Zoom call these days and walk you through what is it that we do, how do we do it, and all that other story around the ways of working and how we work, and we have clear guidelines around all those things. But once you have been in that space for a while and your performance is stellar, the way you engage people is excellent, and you're meeting and exceeding all your different targets, you find that then you become a leader of that team. So because you are technically astute, because you have proved that, assume you are answering client calls, you are always managing your time well, and your quality scores are always high, then you're promoted to become the leader of that team. But unfortunately, no one tells you that that side of the world is very different from where you're coming from. So you automatically feel like a leader, or like the person who knows what needs to happen, because you have always been at the top of whichever dashboard or whichever metrics you have been using. So you step into this new world knowing that now it's your time to shine. You have struggled through life, you have been there, you have been told all the different things that you should be doing, and it's now your turn to tell the world what they should be doing. And so you enter with a lot of excitement, a lot of happiness. The day you get that formal appointment, or the day you receive that letter, or the day you receive that news that from today onwards, you're now the supervisor of this team, you're the team leader, you're the new manager, whatever the title is, but you're now responsible for what happens here. It's time to kick back, relax, and enjoy life. Unfortunately, once you step in, you then realize that the world is very different from what you imagined. In fact, a friend of mine the other day asked me, I thought the higher you go, the less you actually do. And that reality is not true, because leadership is actually about responsibility and not about favors, or not about privileges. The privileges you get might be, now you receiving a larger cup of tea. It might be you being served first in the cafeteria. It might be you getting a seat that is reserved for you when everybody else is hot desking. But with that small privilege comes a lot of responsibility, which unfortunately no one walks us through when they're moving us from that stellar performer to being this new person who's now responsible for 3, 4, 5, or 6 people who you have to take into consideration. So as you walk that journey, there's a lot of disillusionment that then comes, because you knew it was my time to shine, and then suddenly the shine has been taken away from you, and you have found yourself now, in Kenya, they would say the KYM, or the mboch of the rest of the team. And you are wondering, why then would I want to take this up? Why then would I need to be that person who is at the forefront of bearing the brunt of non-performance, having to figure out when people are coming late, why are they coming late? What do we need to do? Figuring out how do we make sure that everybody is taken care of, listening to all customer complaints and the like. For you to be able to succeed and actually thrive, and dare I say, maintain your mental well-being, there are certain key transitions then that you would need to go through. And the journey has to start internally before it can go external. So what I would try and do is just walk us through what are those transitions that we would go through, then figure out what are some of those skills that you need to have, and at the end, just leave us with some key mindsets that we should have. And I think that our time together will have been well spent. So the first thing is you are actually changing from being a follower to being a leader. And this happens in a flash. No one tells you that, from now on, you should start thinking about where will others go. You have always been the one who comes and says, we need to figure out what's the plan for today. You are not the one who has thought about the plan. And I remember during one time, I was a member of a team. I was happily seated there in a meeting and life is going on. And as I was sitting in the meeting, an announcement is sent on email that now I am the leader of that team. And as we are used to it here in Kenya, you have what are called roadside declarations, which truly felt like one of those. I didn't know that the announcement was coming. And everybody in the team then stopped and asked, so what should we do now? Because you now are the leader of this team. And I'm clueless about first, what does this mean? I need to go back to the person who sent the announcement and ask him, what did you have in mind? But at this point in time, I'm sitting in a meeting and I have to give leadership. So you have to look composed and say, no, let's just carry on and I'll give you more details as we go along. That mindset has to shift immediately, and you have to then figure out you no longer are the one who is going to keep on contributing as an individual, but you are now moving to a place where you have to deliver through others. So as you think about being a leader of these others, you're actually thinking about how do I empower these others? How do I create opportunity for these others to shine? It's no longer about you shining, but it is if we shine, then I shine. If I shine on my own as a leader, I am actually healing the rest of the team. So you have to then figure out, how do I move to that point? Now, unfortunately, if you have been an excellent individual contributor, and if you are in a space like that of sales, it makes you most likely a very bad person at this, because you are very, let me call it mean. You work towards, how do I gather all the leads for myself? How do I ensure I have everything I need to succeed? And it doesn't really matter whether other people have what they need or not. But as you switch, then you start thinking about, how do I make sure all my people have what they need to be able to succeed? And if they all have what they need to succeed, it means we will all succeed. Then you move from being one of the boys to being the special one, and the boys, you'd normally hang out, you'd talk about whatever you're talking about. If you're going for tea, you're all going for tea together. If we're going for lunch, if you're going for a drink, whatever that thing is that you guys did together, you are a team. But suddenly, you are now no longer a member of that team. Everybody looks at you differently. Your height is the same, your weight is the same, your name is the same, but suddenly it's like you have leprosy or something. You walk into a room and everybody keeps quiet. And this is one of the biggest struggles new leaders go through, because you end up on one of two extremes. One is you try and prove that you are in charge, and so you force everything and you want to remind people, don't you know I am the leader of this team? And it means that you're not bringing out the best in your people, because you now want them to recognize that I am the one. You will remind them when they come in, you must leave my seat empty, because don't you know I am the leader? When you arrive and find no one has served you tea, you will ask them, have you guys forgotten that we are no longer equals? If you are arriving and you have this preferred parking next to the building, and you find someone who is standing near that, maybe he hasn't even parked his car there, but just the fact that they're near becomes a whole big fight around it. And you lose the team immediately. The opposite of that is where you want to be a very good friend of the team members. And you're feeling like you're getting isolated because now your status is slightly different. And so there has to be that balance between how do you engage as quote unquote a friend, and how do you engage as the person responsible for the rest of the team? How do you create that balance where people would then know that now we are talking as friends, and the fact that then after this I ask you about your deliverables doesn't mean we have stopped being friends. It just means that there is a responsibility you have and you need to deliver on that responsibility. So we need to make sure that as we are moving on into this new space that we are in, we are able to balance the two things. The final one, which I think is the most interesting, is you move from complaining about others to the one being complained about. And you have to come to terms with this. You always in the past found fault with others, whether it was the company did this, or my manager did this, or my supervisor did the other, to realizing now you are all those things. When people talk about management, you are management. When people talk about the company, you are the company. And even though you have your own strong feelings about things, it is not in your place or your best interest to then join the team and say, truly, this company is against us, or this company is taking advantage of us, because whatever you say not only becomes the truth for the others, but it also becomes the standard by which they measure the company. You are actually the face of the company to the teams that you lead. And a colleague I had used to like saying that you cannot influence from far, which simply means that a CEO may be all powerful, or a HR director may be all powerful, wielding all the different power and the ability to give all the different things. But the true impact of a company will be felt by the individuals from the immediate supervisor. So if you are there and you are very nasty, their view of the company is that this company is nasty. If you are there and you are caring, and caring doesn't mean you go overboard, but you actually are empathetic to the situation of people, and you're figuring out how do you support people and how do you help them to deliver, then people's view of the company is that the company actually is concerned about us. So you have to be very careful to balance between trying to be the best friend of your team members and trying to be the taskmaster on the other side. And don't also listen too much to everything that people are saying, because you might actually hear some of the things they're saying, and those things might take out the wind from under your sails, while you thought you were doing everything possible to support your team and make life better for them. You might actually find that people are complaining about things which you don't think are important. So I'll giving you an example of one time in the organization, we were celebrating, and in my past experience, I supported sales teams quite a bit. I now I moved from KCB, which Vicky mentioned, and now I'm with a consulting firm. So life is very different. But when I joined the first bank I worked for, we had an engagement that we were celebrating people's performance. And so one of the things that then to celebrate people's performance was, let's buy people lunch. And I was told, now that you are here, you are one of the new leaders, you need to buy someone lunch. And I was happy to buy lunch, because let's go sit, have lunch, as I understand, what it is that you're doing to succeed, and, all that. And when I then said, okay, so when do we do lunch? The person looked at me like I was speaking Greek and asked me, why would I want to go for lunch with you? Just give me the money. And I was shocked, hurt, and many other things in between, because I didn't realize that for them, the money was more important than this lunch. For me, it was, let's sit down, let's have a meal, let's have a conversation. But for them, it was cares about a conversation. I know I'm going to need that money after this. And later on, I could hear people then complaining there. These people, what do they think? They just want us to go and eat a meal together. And I realized it was actually me who had misunderstood what was important to the team members. And so it's important for us to figure out what is important to these people, so that as you are engaging in the right way, and you are not imposing your own thoughts and your own, let me call them perceptions of what is important to the different people. Now, once you have understood that there are different ways in which you will engage, and different skills are required at different times, as well as different situations call for you to present yourself in different ways, then it's important for you to think about what are the skills that you require to present yourself as this new leader. And hopefully you have somebody who you can bounce off those ideas with. If you don't, that is why Vicky is here. You can reach out to her, and she would be able to help you figure out, okay, this is just some of the things that we're talking about. We will by no means speak about all those skills, but the idea is just to help you remember that you have not arrived. The fact that you have become a leader just means that you now need to become even more aware of the different challenges that you face. So the first is figuring out how do you manage yourself? Because without managing yourself, you will be unable to manage others. So if you think about where you are as an individual, are you aware of who you are? And are you aware of what impact you have on others? So you will have people who are very unaware of their actions and unaware of the impact they have on others, that even before you start delivering on the job, people have already quote unquote quit. And these days we have the quiet quitting, we have the shouting quitting, you know, there have become very many of those different quittings. And people might be sitting with you, but they're actually not with you. So it's very important for you to be, first and foremost, very aware of yourself. I worked with one of my most memorable bosses, and memorable for all the wrong reasons, because she, okay, I shouldn't have said, let me say they. By the way, gender is neutral, because I've worked with both a lady and a gentleman who are quite unique in terms of their engagement and how they drove us to do strange things. But this individual would come into the office, and we had a sitting arrangement where we all sat and kind of all desks were to face each other. But this individual chose to turn their desk to face the wall. So the rest of us look at each other and they sit and face the wall. Without communicating anything, they had communicated a lot. And one day they then used words to remind us of what they had been saying all along, which was that, I'll say she anyhow, because yeah, it doesn't. She told us that every 2 years she makes a friend. And in this 2-year window, she has already made a friend. So, and we were a very small team, because I think we were just five of us, including her. So she told us, basically, you guys make friends amongst you and just leave me alone, because I have already taken this 2-year window. So then wait for the next one. And that, you know, completely finished us. It had nothing to do with the job. It had nothing to do with her capability. It had nothing to do with our competence, but it had everything to do with her lack of self-awareness. Because even if you think something like that, that isn't something you should go and speak to people about. Now, by saying that, we all switched off and we all knew that we then need to be friends amongst ourselves and leave her alone. And so even if we have problems, we know that she's not the one who's going to address any of those problems. The second thing that you need to do is learn how to effectively communicate. And a phrase I saw which has stuck with me, and I put it up on my wall wherever I have a wall, is nothing is so simple it cannot be misunderstood. Nothing is so simple it cannot be misunderstood. And I'll give you a very basic example, which I like to share, of life outside work, because at work it's very easy for you to then think about, these are my KPIs and everybody should understand them. I was once asked to go to the supermarket and buy beef cubes. And because I was in a hurry and I am a very helpful individual, I dashed out and got to the supermarket. Then when I reached the supermarket, I found that there is 2 items called beef cubes. There is beef, the meat, chopped up in cubes. And then there is beef cubes used for cooking. And which one do you think I bought? Perhaps you could put that in the chat. Very simple question. Beef cubes, which one do you think I bought? I don't know if Vicky, you can read out which answers are there.
I'm seeing people might know you. They're refusing to put which beef cubes. Oh, there's one who said Royco cube. So at least there's one who has been specific. But most guys are saying beef cubes, Royco, beef, the actual one, beef cubes. Or did you buy both to play it safe?
That person is a genius. That person who said buy both is a genius, because that is what I did. Because you can imagine me arriving back and saying, okay, I've come with this. And then I'm told, but what we actually needed was the other one. So to cover myself, I arrived with both and said, whichever we don't need now, I am sure we are going to need in the future. Life isn't always as simple to maneuver around. And so it's important for us to figure out, how do we effectively communicate so that the person we are engaging with not only hears the words, because communication means that meaning has left me, it has gone to somebody else, it has been interpreted and understood with the same exact meaning that I was trying to pass. Because we are very busy as leaders, many times we will assume, because we spoke in a language that others are familiar with, they understood what we meant. So someone will come and say in English, tomorrow, make sure you do X, Y, Z. So the team member knows that I need to do this thing, but they don't know they need to do it the first thing in the morning. So when you arrive in the morning and it's about midday, you ask, so have you completed? They're like, no, it's on my list of things to do. And you're wondering, I thought I told you tomorrow when you come. Then said, yeah, I came, but I had all these other things to do. So I'm going to do it. I haven't refused to do it. And we get a lot of problems just because we are unable to communicate effectively. So we have to take that extra 2 minutes just to make sure people have understood. And a good thing to do is always ask someone, so please narrate back what you have understood, or ask a question just to clarify what people have understood. The other is time management. We have 1 million things to do, but we have very few hours in every day. So how do you figure out, how do you make time for all those things? Most importantly, how do you make time for your team members? Because people know what you value by what you make time for. So you have all this time to engage on all your different deliverables. You have all this time to engage with all the different seniors. You have all this time to engage with customers, but you have no time for your team members. And that sends a very strong message that they are a by the way in this whole conversation. So how do you structure time to ensure you can engage with them? And how do you make it clear to them that they are a priority? You know, remember, you're now not delivering as an individual, but you're delivering through people. So how do you ensure that that is clear to them? And it's those small cues that you send out. If someone comes to speak to you, then take some time out and stop emailing, stop texting, listen to the person. If you're unable to speak, then block a time and tell them, let's speak at this time, and actually be there to be able to engage with them. The final is, how do you make your decisions? People thrive when they know how you make decisions, because then they can speak also on your behalf, even when you're not there. But if they're not sure, you will find that people will keep on coming to you with every small decision because they are not sure. Is today the good day? Is today the bad day? Sometimes you will agree that you have given us the authority to make certain decisions. The next day you will shout about it. One day you will challenge us to think about solutions. The next day you will challenge us to not use our heads, but we need to follow policies. So how do you then balance out and make it clear for people? How do you make decisions, one? But two, how do you then give them the space to also activate their brains? Because these are all very smart people, otherwise you wouldn't be working with them, to begin to do the things that they need to do. And this is where your skills in coaching and engagement also become very important, because as people feel more empowered, they own more of the process, they own more of the outcomes, and they are very eager to then engage in these different endeavors. The second part is managing others, because you are now delivering through others, which means you have to figure out, how do you ensure that those others are actually walking the journey with you? Reminding you where we started. If you are a leader, but no one is following you, you're taking a walk, which means if you have a title, but the title is just a title, everybody is doing whatever they want, and you're there banging the table to remind them that you're the leader, it means you're not the leader. You may have the title, but you definitely are not the one who is engaging these people and directing them where they should go. So the first thing that you need to figure out is, how do you build collaboration? We are in a very intertwined world today where everything we do you probably are engaging with someone else, and some of our workplaces today are very dynamic. You are sitting in Nairobi, but you're working with somebody in Lagos. You are sitting in Oslo, but you're working with somebody in the US. And how do you build that collaboration? Even if you're sitting in the same space, it is possible that you could be in the same place, but you are not together. I was sharing with Vicky about a small book I read, which I would encourage you to go and look for as new leaders. It is called Simple Sabotage. And this book is about how people during the World War were trained to basically go and sabotage the enemy, but without destroying grand infrastructure or machinery. All it was simply delaying decision-making or changing the focus of conversations so that a decision is not made or action is not actually taken. And by the end of, so if you're having a meeting and you're engaging on, we need to buy breakfast for the team tomorrow, somebody else starts talking about the problems that we have with the chairs in the office, and they have this whole conversation about the desks, the furniture. By the time you're done with all that, you now have an action item about how we have to rethink about how our offices are organized, how our desks are set up, are they functional? But remember, the first problem people had was engagement was low because they wanted tea. And now you have done all these other things, but haven't provided the tea. Neither have you discussed the tea. And so the sabotage is not necessarily somebody who is coming in and is looking at how do I destroy the team, but it's how do I break the collaboration. And so you have to guard that jealously. Second is you have to figure out how do you effectively delegate? Because if you try and do everything by yourself, you will get to a place where you will find that you are unable to keep up with all the requirements. And two, you are supposed to be delivering through others. And so you are actually not leading the team. You are just there doing the work, and other people are sitting waiting to figure out what they need to do and what they're responsible for. The third is understanding motivation. Motivation is what makes people give that extra effort. And for some people, it might be a word of affirmation, telling somebody thank you. For somebody else, it might be public recognition. For somebody else, it might be, a cash reward. So understanding where people are at and how to best get them to give you that extra effort will determine whether they feel like you understand them, one, and two, would then determine what becomes their action after that. I worked with a gentleman, again, in that sales world, who used to get very stressed about public recognition. And this guy was a super performer. So he would always be at the top of the list of people who are delivering. But on that day, when we have this grand meeting where he's being awarded whatever prize it was, for some reason, he would always have a client call. And so one day I asked him, what's the deal? The whole world is gathered. Like one time I think he was being given an air ticket to go somewhere. So everybody's here with this air ticket, but you just didn't show up. Don't you think that's a little madarao, to put it politely? But the guy said, if there is something that stresses me more than anything else, is being called onto a stage and people talking about me. So you can imagine when a whole organization has gathered and you are called on the stage and they are looking at you, and the guy is about to enter, to drill a hole into the ground. And so he was almost at the point where he was thinking about, should I then at some of these points, when I know there's a competition, reduce my performance so that I don't have to go through that stress level? Which then means that what you meant as motivation is actually becoming a demotivator for the team. And we need to understand each individual within our teams to then know what would motivate one and what would not motivate another. The other is wherever you have individuals, you will find something for us not to agree on. And that means that we are going to have conflict. And conflict is not always a bad thing, because sometimes it drives us to think more creatively about things. Sometimes it drives us to engage deeper than we would have done. But when it crosses a certain line, it then becomes destructive. And as a leader, you then have to balance that out and help your team members manage conflict. You then become the gauge also of within the organization, within the team, what is the acceptable temperature, what is the acceptable mode of behavior, so that people don't cross the line. You know, people can disagree on ideas, but people should not then cross over and begin to disagree on personalities and name calling and, you know, shouting at each other and maybe even physical engagements, which are unacceptable. The final bit is managing the business. And on one end, you have yourself as the individual. If you manage yourself as an individual, it means that you would be able to effectively engage with others and drive them. But once you have then gotten all these people aligned and you have all of them motivated, they then need to go out and do something. And that's where you then move them into the business and what are the business priorities, because they feel taken care of, they then take care of the business. So one is you have to understand what the business is about. And we talk about business acumen. Might sound like a big word, but it simply means, why are we in business? What is it we are trying to do? What problem are we solving? Number one. Number two is, how do we actually make money? Assuming you are in a for-profit. If you are in a non-profit, what's the purpose why we exist? If you don't understand the business, then you might actually be fighting people on things which are non-entities, or you might not understand when people are putting in effort to drive certain things which seem counterintuitive, but it's because they understand what is most important for the organization. So everybody, you know, for those of you who have done an employee survey, one of the things that you will always see is a low scoring item will be pay and benefits. People always want more money, you know, and it's interesting how we all have good salaries until we talk to our neighbors and discover they're earning more than us, and suddenly your good money is not enough. But an organization can't give everybody everything they want, because for them to continue being in business, it means that there has to be value being generated by an individual for them to be able to generate value for you. So if I'm going to be given a salary of 2 million, it means that I need to be generating more money than 2 million for the organization to continue running and have money to pay me my 2 million. If you don't understand how all of that connects, you might then, in your quote unquote small team, not be driving the right behaviors. And if you think about business development, people always think about it's those people who go out to do sales. But the reality is, you who is in a workshop somewhere are actually doing business development, because if you manage things correctly, if you repair the different equipments correctly, if you are courteous to customers, people will come back because of you. If you are rude to customers just because you answer the calls, everybody will leave the organization, and it doesn't matter what discounts they're given, it doesn't matter what type of engagements people have out there. The second is, once you have understood how we make the money or why we are in business, what it is we are trying to solve for, is, do we actually get things done? Because as a team, we could talk about everything in the world and go around in circles. But if we are like the proverbial African nations who have wonderful plans, but the plans are always on our desks gathering dust, then it means that there is no progress being made, number one. Number two, there is nobody being developed. And number three, the business is actually not making any money to be able to take care of you as an individual and the team that you lead. And so it's important to go and study those things. You know, go and look at which metrics are important in your organization. If you're a publicly listed company, you will normally have those quarterly stakeholder briefings. But many of us don't bother to listen to those, because you say, these are for the senior guys. They need to go and see us. We are just waiting to be told how much bonus we have made. But if you're not looking and seeing, for us to get our bonus, we have to meet a certain threshold, and we are far from that threshold, and ask ourselves, what do I need to do between today and the end of the financial year so that my bonus is assured, then you have missed the mark. If you're not able to explain that to your team members so that each of them sees and understands how their small part of the puzzle actually feeds into the larger whole, then you are also missing your mark as the leader of that team, because you are the bridge connecting the big objectives of the organization with the requirements and delivery of each member of that particular team. Now, when all this comes together, we have results at an organizational level which we celebrate. But behind the scenes, as the leader of this team, you have to figure out how do you come back then and celebrate with your team. When things have not worked at that level, how do you come back also and help people understand what it is that we could have done differently, or what it is that we need to do more so that we can actually get the required results. For us to achieve all of this, there are two mindsets that I would like to leave with us. The first is trust is earned, not demanded. You know, a title is something you worked towards because you were delivering, because maybe you are, as a former colleague of mine used to say, you are leaving blood on all the corridors, because yours was just, how do I get to the end? How am I celebrated? Who cares what happens behind me? But now it is, I need to get to that podium, but I care what is happening behind me. So I will wait and listen to all those questions people have and try and answer them. I will try and figure out how do I support these people behind me for them to be able to get to that place. I will be there to be their champion in those rooms where they are not there. If people don't trust you, then they will not be willing to go that extra mile for you. They will do everything that you demand up until the point it is demanded, which means I'm employed from 8 to 5. It is 5 o'clock. I'm in the middle of a process. I'm sorry, I need to leave. It is 5 o'clock. If I stay beyond 5 o'clock, I'm waiting for overtime. The second is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And this is a quote that has been said by many people. I think one of the most famous is by Theodore Roosevelt. And the reality is we are experts. Part of the reason why you're leading the different teams you're leading is because you have been proved to be an expert in something. You're either an expert in managing people, you are an expert in processes, you are an expert in managing resources, but you need to be an expert in showing people how much you care to bring out the expertise in each of those people. Your expertise is only but a small fraction of what is needed for the organization to thrive. So if you're able to build trust by showing people you care, then it means that you will go above and beyond any of the different metrics that people have put for you. And two, you will then leave people wanting to do things not just for the organization, but for you. And I'm sure you have all heard of that phrase, people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. And so it's a good point for you to reflect and see of your team. Are people leaving because they have opportunities that they are going to go and thrive? Or are people leaving despite not having opportunities just because it is that time they need to leave you? And they will do whatever it takes. Some will even take a pay cut just to be away from you. Finally, a quote by a great philosopher who I encountered a few years ago. His name is Ben Parker. And I put it into this transition, so as you transition into leading others, his actual quote was, with great power comes great responsibility. And this is when you change into who you will be for the rest of your life. Now, great power doesn't mean that you are the one who is signing off the budget of Kenya. You are the one employing everybody. But great power just means influence. if you get people excited about their jobs, you get people excited about the responsibilities they have, you get people feeling that they are contributing towards the well-being of humanity. When they go home to the homes that they go to, they take that great feeling with them. But if you make them doubt their capabilities and competencies because of how you handle them, if you make them feel less than valued because of how you engage with them and how you give them feedback, they take those same frustrations to the homes that they go to. And so think about how many homes, how many lives, how many countries you are either building or destroying just because of how you are handling one individual. And I have 3 people in my life that I have worked with as managers who I have utter respect for because of how they handled me. And what fascinates me is my wife has very strong feelings about those people, not because she even knows them, but just because of how she feels that they handled me in terms of the conversations she would hear, in terms of just the engagements we would have when I'm arriving home from work. So always think about, are you building the nation? Are you building individuals, or are you breaking them? And for those of you who have not encountered Ben Parker was actually the uncle of Spider-Man. So if you get time to watch the movie Spider-Man, I think you would be highly impacted. And I will stop there and open it up for some questions, if there are any, for us before we close this session.
Oh, wow, gosh, I have just been writing note after note after note. Not one single moment have I felt, that thing of, oh my goodness, this is something. Actually, my feeling was, I don't want to miss anything. Thank you so much, Sam. You've shared, I guess, so vulnerably as well. And you have shared so simply. I mean, you put the concepts out there in such a simple manner and in such a practical manner, and also in such a realistic manner, because I mean, sometimes we get into conversations about manager and we might gravitate towards the people aspect and forget that we have an obligation to the business. And I actually loved the fact that you said you are the face of the business when you're talking about you're the one they're complaining about. You're thinking when they
Looking
talk
for
about
who to point at, but you are the one being pointed at.
You're the one being pointed at. You can no longer point together with everyone else. And I think for me, I have picked so many things that I think, I guess, rephrase, put in a different way, and thinking about the journey of also as myself being a leader and growing into leadership. I think this last quote here, not even the part for with great power comes great responsibility, but the paraphrasing of this is when you change into who you will be for the rest of your life. And I guess that speaks to the fact that at this point, you're leading yourself, you're managing yourself. So much I could say, but let me read some of the comments I have here. I have, what is the secret to leading successful Gen Z teams? That's a question from Nicolas Otieno. And there was a question earlier on before the cubes story, the Reiko cubes. There was a lot of activity. So I'm trying to figure out where that question is. But it was about sales. Yes, what should be the content of your speech on day one as a sales manager? So those are 2 questions. What should be your content on of your speech on day one as a sales manager? And then coming back down, what is the secret to leading successful Gen Z teams? I'll let you answer those 2, and then I can read out the rest of the comments.
So if I put them together, do you understand people, and do you understand that leadership is actually about people? The people then do the processes. The people then go out and deliver. So if you think about Gen Z, you need to think about what is it that actually makes them tick. And 2, do you have your own blind spots that you are judging these people unfairly? Even before they say anything, someone walks in and you have already written them off. While the reality is those guys are probably extremely smart, extremely driven, but they've already switched off just because they saw you came in with a notebook and they didn't see you with a digital something. And so how do you then engage in a way that brings out the best in them and helps them understand also where you're coming from and what is also important for you. Because at the end of the day, it's not trying to change them from how they have grown up, which is being a digital native, to where we came from. You know, some of us grew up and there was one fixed line phone in the estate, while this person woke up and the first toy they were given was a phone. So how do you then bridge the digital divide? Because it's about the people connection. It's not about, you know, our differing experiences. The second to sales, I think, is reminding people that you're actually here to enable them. So you have come to enable their success. You understand there are things that they have done and they have done well. And yours is coming to see how do you lift that to the next level. If you know that they have been struggling in certain areas, you are not coming to tell them, these are the problems you have, and so I will sort them for you. There's a manager we worked with who arrived, and the first thing they reminded people was, we are the ones you have been waiting for. And from there it was just downhill, because, you know, people ask themselves, so what's the magic thing you're coming to do? So all engagement, when you think about leadership, when you think about new levels of responsibility, is how do you engage the people? How do you make them feel? And how do you then give them a clear path to that success?
Okay, thank you very much. I'll read some comments and then I'll read two other questions that I have seen. Some comments that are coming in are about real deep. Thank you, Samuel. Thank you so much. Very insightful, simple, but very loaded. Thank you very much. You have restored me in leadership. Well done, presentation. A whole training in just 1 hour. Imagine that. Very insightful. Every leader and those aspiring should hear this conversation. Great, awesome insights. Loved it from Francis. What a presentation. My takeaway is, are you building people or breaking people? And someone has shared here that people leave managers, and it has happened in my own house. I don't know what that person meant. So
Let's hope it's
I'm
the
just going to
employee in the
take it
house.
as it is. Yeah, but so I have two questions here. One from Ivan, I think that's his or her name, asking, please talk about leadership in places with no structures and cutthroat competition. That's question number one. No structures and cutthroat competition. And then the second one from Peter Kitavi is, when the fire starts wearing down, and I think this one speaks to many of us, and motivation is ceasing after the first 100 days of office, probably 100 days. How do you maintain consistency in giving while leading? Yeah, do you think you can take another one, or you want those two?
Yeah, let's take one last one, I think.
Okay, and the third one is from Paul, where he asks, to what extent should leaders become vulnerable? Leaders inspire, challenge, hold others accountable, but there's always a need for a balance and a need to demonstrate resilience. How should there be that balance? I think maybe you can get the question from there. I think I'll give you those three.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll try and just dash through them. Number one is where there's no structure and where there is cutthroat competition.
Yes.
Competition, after a certain point, is actually bad for your health. Let me put it as plainly as that. And so it's important for the people in leadership to figure out, how do you manage the competition so that competition then becomes something that helps spur people, but it doesn't get people to a place where they will do whatever it takes to succeed. Because that's when people will cross over to doing illegal things. That's when they will cross over into taking advantage of colleagues, or that's when they'll cross over into even harming, you know, other colleagues in the workplace. Where you have no structure, it means that you are relying a lot on influence, which is, I think, where we started. Influence is about how do you get things done? How do you get people to buy into whatever it is that you want them to do, or the direction they want you to go? So how do you build your stature to be a consensus builder? And consensus builder doesn't necessarily mean you are in a committee all the time caucusing things, but you are helping people see, if we do this, how does it help you achieve what your goal is? You build allies across the organization and across the different lines where you need support or where you can offer support, and then you are moving together. The more people see you as a problem solver, the more they will tend to rope you into things, the more influence you have, the more you find yourself just rising above everybody else in stature, even without the title. The more people see you solving their problems, the more they want to engage with you. The second about loss of fire is real, because remember, as a leader, you're always giving. But if you're not refilling the well, it means that you are actually running dry. And I have experienced that myself, where you are, quote unquote, fighting so many fires, because almost everything you do, you are fighting another fire. And you don't take time off to take care of yourself, which means go into that space where you are not always fighting. There should be sometimes when you are celebrating some things. Are there places you can go to and enjoy the different things that you're working at? That's one. Number two, do you have people around you who then can also help you? So the people who are complaining about you have each other. So they will complain about you to each other. But do you have a place where you get a sounding board, a place where you can also go and unpack, so that you're not trying to hold everything to yourself? And as a leader, you can't go to the team and tell them, now let me tell you the problems I am having. You'd lose the plot right there. So how do you figure out where is that space, that safe space for you then to go and offload? Third is you must deliberately structure in time for your own development. And I'm saying structure deliberately, because if you don't have it structured deliberately, there will be stuff that always eats up your time, and you will always be very busy. And you can become too busy for your own development, which means that after a while, all that you had has then gone, and you don't have anything extra. You don't know what new things are happening. You have no knowledge. So if you can join a professional body where you are going in and engaging, if you can find people who you can have those stimulating conversations with, if you can find conferences, not going to the coast just to go and enjoy life, but actual places where you go and you get stimulated, and you then are stretched to think differently, would be very useful. And have a clear plan around how you're developing yourself and how you're growing. Last one is, to what extent should you be vulnerable? We are humans, let me put it that way. And we need to understand that the people we work with are also human. So once you understand your team, you then know how much is enough intuitively. I don't think there's a guide that tells you, okay, today talk about your experience at home, tick. Day 2, talk about your children. Day 3, talk about your experience on the road. There isn't anything like that, and it would become mechanical after a while. But when people feel that you actually are talking about you in reality, people also open up to talk about themselves in reality. I once listened to one of our leaders in this country who is very good at speaking very scripted speeches. So it sounds like they're talking to us, but when you listen to the themes are actually the same things. And it is clear that this was a practiced speech, and it was, quote unquote, a political engagement where they're not a politician, but they are trying to appeal to you based on things that they think would be important to you. But it's very different when someone comes in and he tells you about their real life experience, like somebody who during their high school days actually missed fees. What they did. And it inspires your team, because then they're able to see, one, you are a real human like us. And two, you have real problems like ours. If you're able to overcome them, we can overcome. And two is that if I come to you with a real problem, you actually will listen, not to judge me, but to see, okay, can I empathize? Can I help you resolve? Or can I just point you in the direction of somewhere where you can get that? So figuring out how to be as human as possible, But the other thing to remember is, as a leader, you don't want to change. So the fact that you're now a leader doesn't mean that you should become the most boisterous and loudest person in the office. It just means that you need to be yourself with more skill.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are one of those quiet people, knowing that if I am quiet, I need to figure out how to engage the team and for them to feel that there's space for engagement. If I was loud, I need to be clear that I don't want to overshadow the whole world because I'm always talking and I love the sound of my voice. Do I give space for others to have their opinions heard?
Wow, another nugget. You need to be yourself, but with more skill. So very simple way of putting it. It's now 7:06. Do you think you can take maybe 2 more questions? We end at 7:10.
Okay, if the people are still on, can do those
So
last. Yeah.
for everyone who's here, I know the webinar ends at 7. We're just going to take another maybe 5 or 6 more minutes. We answer and then we do close the webinar so that we are not too late. It's just actually 2 questions, and the first one, there's so many comments coming. Sometimes I lose them. But there's one lady who had asked about how do you establish, where is she, credibility as a new manager.
Mm-hmm.
Why have I lost her? And the second person was, how do you handle emotional members of your team? That's the second question.
Wow.
Maybe you can start with the second as I look to rephrase the first one.
Yeah, so emotional members of the team is always a tricky thing, especially for us of this gender.
Yeah.
Because we on this continent have not particularly known how to deal with this. And I remember having a performance conversation with someone and they burst out crying. And, you know, we were 2 gentlemen. We had to stop because we didn't know what to do with ourselves. Had a similar experience, and the other person was a lady, and she told the person who was crying, here are some tissues, please step outside, compose yourself. When you're ready, you can come back. And I was like, wow, because it actually worked. Now, again, to what we talked about earlier, we are humans. Humans go through emotions. Emotions are not bad. The question is, what is the emotion? Can you name the emotion? Is that emotion coming in the way of work? And I remember a training I did with Vicky, which was on emotional intelligence. And she gave us a test to, I think, name the emotions which we had had over a 24-hour period. And I think I could name 6. And they were people who had like 20 or 30 different emotions. So even the vocabulary of understanding this is what it means to be self-aware is very important. So the fact that I don't, quote unquote, go all out on showing the world my emotion doesn't mean I don't have emotions. You know, there will be moments when you feel disappointed. You may be going through certain situations at home or out of the office, which then are weighing you down, and that comes into the office. You may be going through some very joyful situations, which then comes into the office. So how do you balance that out? How do you engage people holistically so that you are not just telling them, you know, you like crying here in the office, but it is trying to unpack, okay, what is happening? Is it a thing that we need to address? Is it something that I'm not equipped for? Because the reality is also, as a manager, you're not equipped to handle everything. That's why you have either HR or you would have partners outside the organization who can support with that. Credibility, I don't know whether I should go ahead or...
Yeah, she says, how can a new manager establish credibility and build rapport with other more experienced leaders whilst bringing fresh perspective and innovation to the team?
Okay, wow, that's a big one with many big words. The reality is trust is earned over time. Credibility will be built over time by people checking if you actually live what you speak. So people will check your track record. You know, when you come from anywhere, people will always find out, where did you come from?
Yes.
And either they will figure out somebody who used to be there, or they will just try and see, okay, what is the what are the values of that place?
Yes.
So the values of a place are known to be, very pro people, very engagement heavy, and very focused on building capability of people.
Yeah.
They will give you that benefit of the doubt that you have come with those values.
Yeah.
If you have come in and you came from one of those places where we knew that you shout at people and all that, people will start from that position of, okay, we expect you to be doing those things. And so they will watch you over a while to see who really are you. And over that time, it's the small actions that you take that prove either people right or wrong. Do you listen to them? Do you give them opportunities to express themselves? Do you empower them to actually think about solutions to challenges? Or are you the one who is the end all and be all to every situation? The other thing is, do not come chest thumping. I have come with the solutions to all your problems in the world. And therefore, forget all the things you used to do. Now listen to what I have said. It is coming and listening to what people's experiences have been. Listen to try and identify what are their successes, what are their areas of challenge, and then leaning into those and seeing, how do I add my 2 cents to that? How do I bring my experience? How do I bring my knowledge or my new capabilities that would help us move to a higher level? The same will be how you engage with the other leaders, because you don't go into the meeting with the other leaders and rubbish everything that they are saying. Neither do you go in and agree with everything. You need to go and first show that you're willing to listen, show that you're willing to collaborate, and then slowly see how do you introduce change in a way that is non-threatening. Because for the other leaders, it might mean that one of their own is no longer there, and that's how you got the job, which means they might be next. Or they are seeing there's another opportunity and now you are a threat to that other opportunity. If they can see you as an ally, then people are more willing to engage with you and support you as you help them achieve their own objectives.
Gosh, great. Thank you so much, Sam. I could listen to you, and I guess we could all listen to you for a very long time. The numbers have kept at the same level, meaning that everyone here is engaged. What I want to do is perhaps stop the screen share, and we can all put the clap emoji as a sign of appreciation for our speaker today, Mr. Samuel Ayiro, who has so graciously blessed us with his wisdom, his words of wisdom. I don't know how to end the slideshow. I think you'll have to end. Huh? I'm trying to think. So on my cue, so yes, continue. Great. So I think I have done it. Have I done it? No? Clearly, I am also very challenged in this area.
You need
I need a
Gen Z.
Quite clearly, I will put your face there for a moment. This is Mr. Samuel Ayiro today, who has been with us the whole entire 1 hour and 10 minutes, has blessed us with his wisdom. I think we can give him a clap, a virtual clap. I am so grateful you honored our invitation and you agreed to come. And I think it has been a blessing for so many of us right now. Like someone saying they've been restored, they've been re-energized. And I think I speak for all of us to say that maybe we will need you to come back again and tackle phase 2 of leadership. But either way, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts at Profiles, and for all the listeners out there, thank you also for logging in, for joining in and making the time. It's now 7:15, so that we don't keep people from what they're supposed to be doing. I would like to end this webinar. And I would also like, of course, to pass a word of blessing to our presenter today. May the Lord bless you always. And to everyone who's listening to us, wherever you are, be very blessed and have a lovely evening, and we shall see you. In case you want to reach out to Mr. Samuel Ayiro. He's on LinkedIn. I'd put in his contacts on the chat. He's very warm and a very personable person, and I'm sure he will take whatever message you have, of course, to certain measures. But otherwise, if you're also going to be on LinkedIn, please don't forget to tag him and don't forget to tag Profiles International. We would like to read the good things that you're saying about this particular session. Thank you so much and have a good night and God bless you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.